somehow I just saw the future, and I don't know, something told me like plant-based is going to be the future.
If you're honest with yourself, as you learn something, you're a little bit confused. Confusion is admitting that you don't know everything you should and trying to get that broad overview. And I call that getting unconfused. Welcome to Unconfuse Me. I'm Bill Gates. My guest today is Amir Questlove Thompson. Most of you probably know him as the drummer of The Roots. He's got 6 Grammys, 1 Oscar, done a lot of books, and also works on food systems, including a meatless cheesesteak. Today, we're going to talk about how he's bringing plant-based foods to reluctant consumers and also his deep love for music and storytelling. Yes. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I think both of us like the word games.
You're a Wordle guy?
Yeah, every day.
Do you have a Wordle group chat? Or do you just play by yourself?
Me and 4 other people.
Okay.
Every morning, it's like, somebody got a 3. Damn.
I'm in 3 different Wordle group
cool.
chats. So
today's word, have you done it yet?
I didn't play it, but my group chat is angry.
It's hard.
Usually I let them go first. They do it first thing in the morning. I do it at the end of the day, usually like at 11 p.m.
Oh, nice. Just in time.
So based on their reactions, I can tell if something is a double letter. I can tell if it's super angry and it's like their 5th or 6th attempt, then I know like, okay, well, it must be a K or a Z or an X. So I have an advantage too.
I'd say today is one of those days.
It's good to know you're a Wordle addict. That's good.
What got you into the plant-based food area?
So, for me, food has always been the greatest social adhesive. Once I started doing Fallon, I've become friends with Anthony Bourdain, and, he was sort of mentoring me in terms of like, food being art and that sort of thing. So I threw these things called food salons. We decided to go rogue one night and like, hey, let's shock everybody and just have like a Shake Shack as the meal for tonight. And it just so happens that my partner, Alexis Rosenzweig, had read this article about a guy named, Patrick Brown, who apparently had this new technology, Impossible, where this hamburger cooks well and all this stuff. And, my thoughts back then with like anything vegetarian or vegan or, I was like 430 pounds. Like I was a junk food. I'm from Philadelphia. I breathe cheesesteaks. So it just so happens that Patrick happened to be in town.
Amazing.
And so it was like, hey, let's do a thing like we do a blind taste test and, Shake Shack versus this plant-based thing. Like it's supposed to be a hamburger that tastes like hamburger but plant-based. And I was like, yeah, that should be fun. Like I just wanted a party trick. And I did 3 of the tests, and every time I chose the Impossible Burger. Somehow I just saw the future, and I don't know, something told me like plant-based is going to be the future. And I'm the guy that was like, always rolled my eyes at anyone who like, oh, you shouldn't eat, animal flesh. That was back in like 2011, 2012. I mean, 10 plus years later, I've been in a lot of first round investments for, Impossible, Notco, Eat Just, Right Rice, Magic Spoon cereal, Appeal. There's a lot of them, but I just feel as though that's the future, and I want to be the person that plants the seed. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that's cool is that it gets rid of the animal cruelty thing, but it's also a big climate thing.
Yes, absolutely.
I came to it more from that climate angle, and I got to meet Patrick Brown. He's very, great scientists, and they're doing well, but, a lot of people want them to make it even slightly better. They have a good roadmap, so I'm optimistic.
The thing is, kind of the cool thing about, especially with Impossible, is, that was back in 2012, 2013, I think. And, I was impressed then. But since then, they've improved and improved. And the thing is that I always felt as though, there's a lot of social issues, especially with Black people in the inner city, that we have yet to get to. And I'm a person that I always wanted to know, why are the worst foods, the high sugar foods, the fatty foods, why is that so accessible? Why is that so cheap? And one day, Magic Johnson was a guest on the Tonight Show. And, I happened to be looking at the production notes because I have to play a walk-on song. And I usually craft the walk-on song about whatever they're there to promote. And I looked and it was like Magic Johnson's TGIF Fridays. And I went down to his room. I'm like, wait, you're here to promote your Fridays restaurant? And I was kind of ribbing him about it. And he's like, no, this is the most important of all my ventures. This is the most important one. And when he explained it to me, that was my Doc Brown flex capacitor, like eureka moment. He told me that where he strategically placed these Fridays are in neighborhoods in which you can't even get a salad within 20 or 30 blocks. Now, I'm from West Philadelphia, so we would have to go all the way out to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, to buy food instead of going to the local neighborhood supermarket. And that's because there was a variety of fruits and vegetables and fresh things there. And once he said that, I realized, like, oh, okay, this also explains my weight and all this. Like, the fattiest foods in the world were accessible to me. I kind of want to change the narrative because I think people have this impression. First of all, there's just no education on how it's made. There's a lot of misinformation. And then on top of that, I just think that the reason why I invested in the Impossible Cheesesteak was I wanted to show Philadelphians locally that just because it's plant-based doesn't mean that it's boring or bland. Just starting there, people are opening their ideas.
I haven't tried the your cheesesteak yet.
Gold belly.
People like it?
Yeah, my biggest fan is Obama. So
All right.
I love all types of food. I know that people just generally don't like a know-it-all, even if it's to the detriment of their own life and health. But I think there's a way to just plant seeds. Like the way that I introduced the cheesesteak, I struck a deal with my local team. I'm from Philadelphia, so at Phillies games, we had plant-based cheesesteak and whatnot. And, it was a hit because most of them gave us feedback like, wow, this really does taste good. Like, it doesn't taste like cardboard. So, yeah, I definitely foresee a future in which alternative foods can sustain us and help us.
Well, we need that. Of all the climate areas, the one that people are probably least aware of is all the fertilizer and
Yeah.
cows, and that's a challenge. But, when you meet people like Patrick Brown, you go, wow,
Pat's intense.
he's intense. Yeah.
And right now, I'll say that the hardest, it needs a perfect cheese to it. So right now it's vegetarian based because we're using real cheese. But the second that there's a plant-based cheese that tastes good, and we have high standards with how it tastes. So as soon as that happens, then we're really going to change the game.
Yeah, I have a few companies that are working on that. I know we have a number of mutual friends, including Nathan Myhrvold.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
That guy is amazing.
Nathan is, to me, that was the closest experience I had to like a Willy Wonka, where you're seeing like robots that you're not supposed to know about. And we had a 20-course meal. And so the world doesn't know that food science can really be fun and creative and that it's art. And so I love Nathan to death.
Yeah, Nathan's the one who taught me that animal fats melt at different temperature than these plant fats. Mm-hmm. So one of the keys to getting the cheese that's going to meet your high standards is to somehow chemically make fats that are really the same as what you're used to. The tongue feel, that ingredient makes a huge difference anyway. So now there's some people who think they can do that, make it even less expensive. So it's incredible, the number of companies.
And also just love the interest of it. There's a school in New York City called I don't know if you ever heard the Food and Finance School. The Food and Finance School is a school that's sort of the equivalent of a performing arts high school, like the Fame School,
Cool.
where you know, have music, drama, dance, creative writing, learning production. This school is the culinary equivalent to that. And these kids are way more advanced in their thinking. Like when you're younger, you just don't, there's no limit, there's no cynicism, like you're just constantly at play. So this school pretty much teaches you everything about the food world. So yes, there's like baking and cooking and pastries, but there's also like cutlery, how to photograph food. On their rooftop, they have an irrigation system, they're raising fish up there. And so I started a program in which for the summer, it's like the food entrepreneurship program in which like 20 or 25 of the students for 4 weeks, they go out to Silicon Valley where like a lot of these future food companies are located. And, you know, a lot of these kids might not have had access to plant-based food technology or any of those things. So they're so advanced in knowing and creating what is needed for sustainability. And I have absolutely no doubts that in 5 to 10 years, we'll even be further down the road with it. So
Yeah, it's great to see science and art and culture kind of coming together.
yeah.
So what's your guilty pleasure snack food?
Okay. My guilty pleasure snack food. So as a Philadelphian, there's a company called Tasty Cake. And it's tri-state. Tasty Cake is kind of like our localized version of like what Hostess is. A Twinkie, a Yankee Doodle, like kind of that sort of part cupcake, part whatever. So there's something called the butterscotch crimpet, which in its heyday, wow. What's your guilty pleasure snack food?
The one I can't avoid, so I just make sure it's on around, is See's Candy has a peanut brittle that is both, you know, salty and sweet, and the mouthfeel is pretty amazing.
Is it bad for your teeth or?
No, it's just a lot of sugar, a lot of
Okay.
calories, and you don't fill up much, you know. So if you have a whole box there, next thing you know, you're just chomping away.
Right, okay.
Another thing that's kind of almost unusual is you have a gigantic record collection.
Yeah, I do. In terms of volume, I have about 200,000 records.
Amazing.
But I don't want people to think that like I just went out and individually like got 200,000 records. I'll say that in the last 6 years, what's happened is, okay, so the way that the record industry was, say in the 50s, 60s, in the 70s, there would be something called one-stop shops. And one-stop shops are the people that order in bulk every type of record. And then they'll service those records to restaurants that have jukeboxes, bars, diners that have jukeboxes, local mom and pop record stores. And so what's happening is that a lot of those one-stop shop owners are, you know, they're passing away. And oftentimes, you know, it'll be a family, they had a one-stop shop, and they're like, well, we have like 30,000 pieces, and we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I thought I'd gone past vinyl, but then my friend Bono gave me a turntable, and he was very thoughtful. He gave me about 12 records that he thought I'd like. And next thing I knew, I was using it.
I heard this.
Speaking of vinyl, we've got a turntable here, and I asked you if you might bring a record. So what do you got?
Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. This is, you know, some of the greatest jazz orchestral work that there is. There's a really awesome cover of Get Out My Life Woman, which was a common song back then. So I guess I want to play the cover of Get Out My Life Woman.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it's a double album. So jazz great Joe Williams is singing on this version. So this album, and this is for my personal collection. I lived in England for a time, and this is like one of the first records I purchased. believe this is 70. Yes.
Get out my life, woman. You don't love me no more, no.
It's like one of the records from my
Get
childhood.
out my life, woman.
Yeah.
You don't love me no more, no, no.
So that's
Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. Yes.
but that's Thad Jones.
Yes.
And that's Mel
You
Lewis.
don't
Yes.
love me no more, no, no.
And Joe Williams, a gentleman that's been singing
Get out my
Like,
eyes, teardrops.
with Duke Ellington since
I got to see my
the
baby
40s
around. Yes, yes.
is singing on this.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Get out
So I also have a record for you. This is Sly and the Family Stone's greatest hits. I'll bet you have a lot of copies of this, but this is actually signed by the
Jesus
artist.
H. Christ. Wait. Yo. This is what you call prime stunting. Like, this is Jesus Christ. Well, right now, actually, I'm coming here straight from the set. I'm working on my follow-up to Summer of Soul is the Sly and the Family Stone documentary. Whoa.
Well, that's great. I watched last night Summer of Soul, which was a blast.
Thank you. There's no way I can have a real conversation with you right now because I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have to ask them how many they signed like that. Maybe not that many. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, that's rare. That's so rare.
In your movie, Summer of Soul, it was great when you got those artists to see them now that they're a lot older.
Yeah, to see
than
them watch themselves.
They were.
My producer Joseph says that that's the best part of the movie, like the Harry Met Sally interstitial of them watching themselves. And you got to understand that just randomly, these two strangers came to me with 40 hours worth of footage, and they were like, "We know you love music, Questlove. Here, take this and direct it." And the way that human nature is, I think, we're so cynical and we're so distrusting. It was almost like, why are you guys coming to me? Like, did Spike Lee or Ava DuVernay say no? Like, am I the last on your list? Like,
Yeah.
is the audio bad? Like, there has to be a reason why you can't find a director to do this. It took me like maybe 6 or 7 months to finally come to grips that, okay, this is your new mission. But for me, the one thing I was worried about was I knew that people of age of the Harlem Cultural Festival, anyone over 45 and up, would instantly gravitate to it. But how was I going to attract someone younger? And, it would have been easy for me to like call up Drake. Like, Drake's uncle is Larry Graham,
Are you kidding?
the
I didn't know that.
inventor of funk. Right. Drake's name is Aubrey Graham. And if people follow Drake on social media, then you know that Drake's father is just as famous as Drake is.
Oh.
And Drake's father's brother is funk master Larry Graham. So, that's the type of grasping for, straws that I was trying to do. Like, maybe I can get Drake to talk about his uncle or something like that. But what I discovered was that the commonality between millennials and Gen Z with what was happening in the Harlem Cultural Festival, like this 50-year gap, was we were starting to see a parallel movement of like the political uproar and the social uproar and the tension of the time that started the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was, the killing of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy. And, we lost our leaders and what's happening, the Nixon administration coming in and a lot of programs getting cut. And we were going, through the same thing with unarmed killings and protest and, not knowing if there's going to be, if we're going to live or if we're safe. And so kind of that was what bonded the time periods together. And I think it's a way better story than what I thought it was going to be.
No, it ended up being phenomenal.
Thank you.
It's amazing how much of the music I knew because that's, the music of when I grew up.
It's weird. That was probably the main battle between me and some of the producers the exec producers, because the thing is that in my mind, I wanted goosebump performances. I'll give you an example. Stevie Wonder. During Stevie Wonder's 40-minute performance, he's doing his mega hits. I mean, still had like Yesterday, 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 I Was Made to Love Her, My Sharia Moore. He had the hits. But it was like the one song in which I got goosebumps watching him perform was also the one song that showed you what Stevie Wonder was about to do in the future. Like, we got a glimpse of what 70s to 90s Stevie Wonder was about to do. And, they were like, well, no one knows the song Shooby Doo Dah Day, so you want to make this a 7-minute performance and start with a drum solo at the beginning? But for me, it was like, but it's an amazing performance, and that's what we have to go with, not the hits. Let's go with the amazing performance. And so I'm glad that we won that battle.
Yeah, a lot of gospel.
Yes.
It's great stuff.
Yes.
There's this song, which I always thought was When Jesus Walks. It turns out it's When Jesus Washes. And of course, now it makes more sense.
Yes.
Because it's really from the Bible. I never knew what were they talking about.
Right. Yeah.
It's baptizing people there. But it's amazing the number of things you get up to. You got books, you got this new movie, you're on TV almost every night.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a schedule.
Well, okay. So my father was an oldies doo-wop legend back in the 50s. And what makes my situation unique is that I'm also the last generation raised by parents that didn't trust or believe in babysitters. So you had to go to work. You had to work with your parents. By 7, they're teaching me how to iron and steam and clean the outfits and go to the cleaners and that sort of thing. By the time I was 9, it was very normal for a 9 or 10-year-old to go to a nightclub and, ask for a ladder, give me a razor blade so I can cut these light gels and switch out light gels and everything. And when I was 10, I was operating the system inside nightclubs. Like it was just normal for a 10-year-old to operate, smoke machine and the lights and the spotlight. And then one day my dad's drummer got in a motorcycle accident. And my dad was just like, well, okay, you know the show, so you're the new leader. And my first gig, that gig was at Radio City Music Hall.
Wow.
Weird enough, right?
Nice place to start.
And my dad felt like it was a jackpot moment because, he doesn't have to pay his guy, $700 a week. For me, it's like I was the richest 11-year-old in existence. So, give him here like $200, he'll buy a bike, he'll be happy. And I became his band leader. That was the modus operandi. And whatever job was available, you did. And I think that that's what I inherited from my family. By the time I got to Fallon, I was teaching at NYU. I was starting the Questlove's food thing. I was writing books. I had my podcast. I was DJing at all odd hours of the night. There were still the Roots, literally on the Tonight Show. I invested in a hoodie store. And so I thought like the more jobs you had, like that defines your value. And then once everything was taken away in the pandemic and we had nothing and silence, I kind of realized that for health reasons like resting, silence, meditation, that's just as important. I'm trying to get to a place where I'm enjoying boring stuff like naps and nothing, the guy that used to always work. So, but I'm still writing books and
7 jobs.
Yeah.
No, it's nice. The pandemic did get us to step back a little bit.
I figured the path to sanity for me was I somehow just went back to being an 8-year-old. Like started drawing and sketching, started watching cartoons, started things that I wouldn't dare do in my too busy to have fun time. So, like, what did you do?
Well, it was a very unusual time for me because the Gates Foundation has a lot of experts on vaccines and infectious disease. In fact, most infectious disease is in Africa and poor countries, and rich countries are very lucky. There isn't that much. I mean, there's some TB, there's some HIV, but not a lot. And one of our concerns was that in the rich world, you have all this oxygen, and even though those systems are overloaded, in poor countries, you have way, way less. And so, we were trying to say, okay, how quick can we get a vaccine? How quick can we get an antibody? Now, the fact that we were involved in writing checks, we wrote $2 billion of checks. It kind of, in a way, you suspend your emotional reaction because you're at least, okay, I'm a fireman. Let's go in here and do all of that. And it was only like a year in when we finally got the vaccine to step back and say, wow, that was crazy. I mean,
So you immediately felt the pressure and the weight of the world on your shoulders, like, I have to use my resources to save the world.
and we can help with this, yeah, because it's our area. In 2015, I actually gave a speech where I said, hey, everybody ought to be concerned about this.
Right.
And, sadly, we didn't get ready
Mathletes
for
versus athletes. Mathletes versus athletes.
And then there was all this insanity about misinformation that, maybe I was benefiting from it, or maybe Fauci was making money off of vaccines, things that were so the opposite that even today I kind of think, hey, is that a joke? But then when you run into people who are actually believe these things, so that was a crazy time. And even now, as we realize, okay, the kids who didn't get their schooling or some level of depression that is still higher.
Resonated, yeah.
For me personally, and maybe a little bit like you, it was so jarring that it did get me to think about my life and what I value, friendships and things. So I can't say that it was all negative. It was scary.
But just to keep you sane, like, would you go to video games, or like just for a moment of sanity? Like, how did you?
I got to do a lot of reading, and one nice thing was because I had no meetings I had to go to, I started exercising, particularly playing tennis a lot more. So it really knocked me out of my normal pattern, and there are some very positive aspects of it. And now when we're going back to normal, I'm sure you're like this. It's like, okay, everybody wants you to resume all the things you were doing before. And you have to kind of force yourself to say,
Oh, don't
wait a
do
minute.
that.
There's some of these things that they weren't bad, but now, I'm living a somewhat different set of priorities. I have to add it all up. You can't do all the stuff that you learned to like during the pandemic and then all that stuff you did beforehand.
Yeah, I too thought, like, okay, well, let me go back. But then, no, I'd still, like, I'd actually morphed into the person I used to laugh at. So, I don't think I was big on like meditation or gratitude or yoga or stretching or morning walks or my health or any of those things. And that was the paradigm shift I needed. It's almost like I needed the pandemic to sort of morph into who I am now. So, wow, thanks for sharing that with me.
So what name does your family call you?
I've always been Amir. There was a period where they would call me by my middle name, Khalib, like playfully. But no, I've always been Amir, especially, when I forget to take the garbage out or do the dishes, whatever. So it's more like Amir with 12 exclamation points at the end. So what name does your family call you?
Well, my dad was also Bill, and he was quite tall, so people call him Bill or Big Bill. So I'm the third. And so in my family, the nickname is Trey. Everybody calls me Trey, which then when people from outside the family around, people are calling
Your name
me
is Trey?
Yeah, that's my name.
Dog, that's a hood name.
Is it?
I wasn't expecting that one. All right. Yeah, I got a cousin named Trey.
Did they give you a hard time about the name Questlove?
No, but it's weird now because, like, there's this dual life thing. Everybody in hip hop, does the government name thing and then their moniker. I didn't want to be Questlove. I didn't want a title.
Okay.
Back in high school, when Tariq was naming us, I decided that I wanted to be a question mark. And the thing was, when we started doing the press rounds, a lot of the European press just thought my name was Mark. So Mark, I was like, wait, why you call me Mark? And they're like, is it question mark? And I was like, oh, no.
It's not going to work.
And so by our third album, Philadelphia Half-Life, I decided that I'm going to go with an old school rendition of that name. So if you're old school, you're either going to be rock, ski, or love.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you're a power broker, so you should be like Trey Rock. That's your name. I'll be Questlove and you're Trey Rock. So you know I'm gonna call you that till the day you die.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It was great talking to you today and a lot of fun.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. And thank you for this.
Yeah.
I got to frame this. This is amazing.
Unconfuse Me is a production of the Gates Notes. Special thanks to my guest today, Amir Questlove Thompson.
Just like crates and crates and crates and crates of records. I'm up to 200,000. But it's also like I have 300 copies of like Culture Club's Do You Really Want to Hurt Me on 45 that I don't need. So, yeah.